As we mentioned a moment ago, nearly two-thirds of Americans disapprove of President Trump's reaction in the aftermath of George Floyd's death, according to a new poll. When the latest ABC Ipsos asked if you approve of the way Donald Trump is handling the response to the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, 32% of Americans say they approve of his reaction, while 66% say they disapprove. The poll also found 74% of Americans feel Floyd's death was a sign of broader problems in the treatment of African Americans by police. 26% of Americans feel it's an isolated incident. Meanwhile, President Trump's approval rating for his handling of coronavirus remains at 39%. 60% of Americans disapprove of the president's handling of the response to the virus. Joe, you've got two numbers in the 30s right now on the two biggest questions in American society right now. First, the coronavirus, which is still very much with us, has been overshadowed, of course, for the last couple of weeks by the protests and demonstrations after the death of George Floyd, and George Floyd's death and this movement in this country where only 32% of Americans believe Donald Trump is doing a good job.
Well, and you look at the numbers. I talked to Gene before. Things are changing dramatically, not just politically, but also societally, in our society. Look at these numbers. And in 2014, I talked about it before, 60% of white people thought that Ferguson and the Eric Garner incident were isolated ones. Now, 70% of white Americans believe it is a systemic problem. It's a systemic problem with policing in black communities. And yet, you look at the number right now in this incredible crisis that we find ourselves in, and yes, 32% of Americans support the way the president's handling it. 66% disapprove. And if you dig into the numbers, another serious problem for the president and for a campaign that was expecting to get 15-20% of the black vote, which would have been much higher than any Republican candidate has ever gotten in the past. 90% of black Americans are opposed to the way the president is handling this crisis. So again, with this many Americans opposing the White House's approach, you would think now would be a time for the president to change his approach towards these protesters and try to find common ground. This is not working politically. Caddy, you look at these numbers, especially as it pertains to the handling of this crisis, and there is no doubt that Monday, and then I need to go to Jonathan Lemire after you, because obviously Jonathan will have some reporting inside the White House. But Monday was a disaster for the president, politically, militarily, and in just about every other way, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, these numbers suggest that Americans actually don't like the sight of innocent protesters being beaten up by police, and they don't like the sight of the military being used in heavy force on the streets of Washington against Americans. And all of the things that President Trump thought of in that kind of gut reaction he has of, oh my God, I've been portrayed as weak, so I better be super strong, actually don't look like strength to most people. That, you know, the scene of going across and holding the Bible with phalanxes of police as protesters have been tear gassed, that has resonated. Americans have seen that, and they don't seem to think that it's strong. And all of the president's gut instincts there, that kind of those personal traits that he always falls back on of, well, I'm being seen as weak, so now I have to be strong, don't actually seem to be playing very well for him at the moment. They don't seem to be working for him, according to these ABC poll numbers.
And so, Jonathan, is there a next move for the White House? Are there any members inside the president's inner staff that might suggest to him that perhaps a less confrontational approach that started with him saying when there's looting, there's shooting, and calling the protesters thugs and talking about law and order? Is there anybody that can go to him and say, Mr. President, this is not working? Let's try reaching out, seeing how if that will do better, because we've lost America on this issue?
There have been preliminary discussions this week about launching some sort of task force to listen to the concerns of minority communities. Secretary Ben Carson was to be potentially involved in that, but that hasn't gotten off the ground yet, and we are now more than a week into this crisis. And what we saw yesterday is also some Republicans speaking out. Obviously, former Secretary Mattis' letter the other day, or his comments sharply criticizing the president, has emboldened other former military members or retired military members. We saw Senator Murkowski from Alaska speak out yesterday. The president, of course, hit back on Twitter almost immediately. And Joe, your point about the African-American voter is spot on. This campaign thought they could do well, maybe historically well, for Republicans with black voters by touting, strong economy and the criminal justice reform and a few other measures the White House has done. They wanted to win some of those voters, but also if they could show that they were working towards helping that community, that might suppress the enthusiasm among black voters to vote against him, to kind of hold those numbers down. If he was able to argue there's not that much of a difference between what a Trump administration would look like and a Biden administration would look like for black voters. And of course, it's a signal to white voters, particularly white suburban voters, that look, the president is trying to help minority communities. But those plans are all more or less out the window right now. And they're scrambling here, and they're not sure if they're going to be able to repair that damage. That polling is so devastating. And the other poll, as a final point, about his handling of the coronavirus pandemic. The president, for weeks now, as we well know, has been trying to change the subject, trying to get the pandemic off the front page because he knew it was really hurting him politically. He tried a number of different tactics. None of them worked. Finally, this death and these protests have done exactly that. The problem, though, and we've reported today, the White House is growing deeply concerned that these protests are the very thing they're going to ignite the pandemic again. And they have restarted some of the coronavirus task force. Dr. Birx is the point person on this to monitor these cases that could stem from these protests we're seeing across the country. But of course, it will be weeks before we know their effects. So yes, these are largely young people. Many of them are wearing masks and they're outside. That may reduce the risk of transmission, but they're also potentially bringing, even as an asymptomatic carrier, bringing that home and potentially infecting their family members. And we won't know those results for weeks.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.